Welcome, builders of the internet! My name is Jessa and I work in construction. As you might have seen from one of my recent videos, I've been in the house buying process lately, so I thought I would share 10 things to look out for with property viewings. This isn't an exhaustive list of absolutely everything, but I would say it's at least a good starting point. As always, you can find my sources in the description.
It's building on my mind.
External features. Before you've even gone inside the house, there are some things that you can take note of, particularly with the external walls, the roof and the garden. If it's a typical brickwork construction, you can look at whether there are any inconsistencies or cracks. Generally, if there are fractures such as this image, it could be a sign that the wall has moved in some way, which could be caused by the house's foundations potentially moving downwards or sinking, which isn't great. Luckily, in many cases of houses having cracks on the render or paint finish, it can be easily repaired with a cutout and fill, which you can probably ask your local builder to do. It's better to get repairs done sooner rather than later, because if it spreads really far, it could allow for damp to enter, and that's a whole other box of worms that I'll talk about later in the video. In terms of other external features, take a look at the roof and see if there are any missing or cracked tiles. It's relatively cheap to replace individual tiles, but if there are significant damaged areas, it could mean more expensive repairs. Flashings are used to seal between the roof tiles and the brickwork, so it's also worth looking around the chimneys or any extensions for rips and tears in the flashings, or just general signs of damage that would need repairing. It's also important to check if the drains and the gutters are clean. If they're full of leaves, this could mean that water might not flow so effectively and get stuck when it's raining, and so on. The last thing to look at outside is the garden. Is there going to be a lot of maintenance required? Will there be enough sunlight reaching it throughout the day? And who else can actually see into the garden or hear it when they're in close proximity? It's good to determine if there is a good level of privacy when you're spending time in this space. For all of these external features, it's definitely also worth asking whose responsibility it would be to deal with any repairs that are needed, especially if you're buying it on a leasehold or if you're not buying the whole house, say a one-floor maisonette. Windows and doors. Once you're inside the property, an easy thing to take note of is the windows and doors. Check that they open and close easily, if the frames are in good condition or if they need replacement, and if the doors have locks, then definitely check if they actually work and whether there are keys available for them. With windows, I think many people like to check out the view that they get from the property, but it's worth also looking at the window itself for if there is any damp or mould on the side, because this could be an indication that it may need replacing or some sealant around the sides. One thing I found with the property that I made an offer on was that there was a lot of condensation on the inside of one of the windows, which basically means that it will need complete replacement, and this will cost me a few £100, so I took this into consideration when making an offer for the place. Internal finishes. After you've finished appreciating the views from the windows, take a look at the room itself. Are the floors, the ceilings and the walls in good condition, or will you need to put some money aside to replace these? Also, does the aesthetic of the place suit you, or would you have to do a lot of redecoration to be happy there? I found for myself that I preferred properties that actually needed a lot of work being done to them, where lots of things needed replacing, because it meant that I could put a lower offer in and make the place much more tailored to suit my needs and preferences. With many places, you'll find the house condition is perfectly fine, so it might not make much economical sense to redecorate it, because it wouldn't really be adding value to the property. Wet areas. When looking at the kitchen and the bathroom, definitely try out the taps to see if they work and how long it takes for hot water to come through. Try turning on the shower too and seeing if the pressure is going to be enough for a good and satisfying shower. As you've probably been able to guess, there is a lot more moisture in the kitchen and particularly the bathroom compared to the rest of the house, so there is a higher chance of mould growing. You can look at the walls and the ceilings for any sign of mould. Ceilings could require specialist anti-mould kits, which can be a bit awkward to scrub because they're harder to reach being high up, and tiles on the walls typically just need a rigorous sponge clean. Remember to wear appropriate face protection for your eyes, nose and mouth if you're going to get rid of mould, which leads nicely on to the next thing to definitely look out for when house buying. Damp. This is something that everyone says to watch out for, and it can be a deal breaker for some people when buying properties. There are 3 main types: condensation, rising damp and penetrating damp. Once damp has started to appear, it can lead to more severe issues such as mould growth and structural damage. Mould growth comes with health risks for your respiratory system too, so it's definitely good to try and fix these issues as soon as possible, or to try and avoid the problem altogether. Condensation is the most common form of damp, and you can typically notice this from running water on windows, decaying window frames, or if there's mould or paint on the wallpaper. To get rid of it, it just requires some good cleaning and maintenance of the house, which is relatively cheap. Another remedy is making sure that there is enough air circulating around your house by opening a window for at least 15 minutes every morning, or buying a dehumidifier, which will reduce the air humidity. Rising and penetrating damp can be difficult to tell the difference between, but either way they require more work to be done to fix the issue. Signs of damp include decayed skirting and floors, stained plaster, peeling wallpaper, particularly cold walls, or damp stains and tide marks showing on the walls. Tide marks are about 1 metre height on interior walls, and they're horizontal and look to be brown or discoloured. When you get the property surveyed, the surveyor should be able to identify the causes of these issues and advise on what would be the best course of action, but it could be quite an expensive and arduous process to get rid of. Space. Another thing to be aware of when you're in the property can include obvious things like making sure that there is enough room, storage and parking to meet your requirements. Say, in the kitchen, can you fit your washing machine, your dishwasher, fridge, freezer, pots and pans and so on? Do the bedrooms have enough wardrobe space for your clothing? Is there desk space to work at? Or would you potentially have to block off radiators and sockets to fit your stuff? It's also good to see how wide and functional the corridors, the kitchen and the bathroom are, where any fixed cupboards are placed, and whether there could be a chance of you constantly crashing into things if you're at least half as clumsy as me. If you feel like going the extra mile, you can bring a tape measure with you to get the room dimensions and to check if your furniture will fit. Alterations. If the previous owners have put in an extension or a conservatory, it's definitely worth checking if this has approved certificates, such as an electrical test certificate, any structural surveys, and a building certificate, to ensure that the work has been checked by competent professionals and is deemed safe to live in. Some things that you as a buyer can look out for is checking the thickness of the walls. Solid walls should be 225mm thick, and cavity walls should be 275mm thick. If you're not sure what the composition of the walls is, it's probably best to ask the estate agent or the seller. If you have the opportunity to measure the thickness of the floor, say around where the staircase is, this should also be at least 200mm to be compliant with building regulations. Another probably more fun test is to jump up and down on the floor to see if the floor bounces significantly, or if there is too much vibration, which could indicate that the floor isn't properly supported. Look at the roof as well to see if it's starting to sag, and then if there are any signs of these things mentioned, consider the pros and cons and whether the property is still appropriate for you to live in. Services. Another thing to think about is the services in the house, so the mechanical and electrical installations. Try turning on and off all the switches to see what they do and if they actually work, or whether they need repairing. Ask the estate agent and the seller how old the boiler is and how often it gets checked and serviced to determine whether it might need replacement or repairing anytime soon. Also definitely ask about the expected costs of the bills for, say, water, heat, electricity, and any service charges and what these service charges cover. If the property is a leasehold, the service charge could include cleaning communal areas, such as maintaining the garden or the corridors, so it's worth asking for a breakdown of these costs so you can sense check if it is actually reasonable. You need to remember that the costs of the bills and service charges will be on top of the mortgage, so just make sure that it still fits comfortably within your monthly or annual budget. Data signal. With every viewing, definitely bring your phone so that you can take lots of photos that you can look at later, or to show somebody else that's more knowledgeable on house buying and properties. But something that a lot of people might forget to check is whether there is actually a good signal from the house. This can be a deal breaker for some people, especially as we are having an increased dependence on our phones, say with working from home or just generally using our phones a lot. Also ask if there are any broadband and TV connections already set up, or if you'll need to get these done yourself. Neighbourhood. I've definitely told you a lot of things to look out for, which can be quite difficult to capture all in one visit. And to be honest, it is recommended to view the property more than once anyways, with more than one person as well, to make sure that they can capture stuff that you might miss. Try and visit the property at different times and different conditions, say for example when it's raining, so you can see if the gutters are functioning, and to be able to get some kind of idea on where and when you might get some sunlight. One of my colleagues has also recommended that if you don't really know the location and the general vicinity, it could be worth a trial period of living somewhere in the area for a couple of months or so to see if it is somewhere that you would actually want to commit yourself to long term. Say with the nightlife, the transport links, and how safe you feel there. Buying a house is a pretty big commitment, so this trial period could really help make your decision if the location works for you. Thanks for watching this video. With all of these checks, it can be difficult to capture everything, so just to reiterate, take as many pictures as possible, bring somebody else with you to see the place so that they can notice anything that you miss, and make a checklist of things to ask about. Sometimes I found that the estate agent could act a bit funny when you ask questions, especially when they don't know the answer, but at the end of the day, this is a really big investment, so you really want to try and get as much information as you can to make an informed decision for making an offer on the property. That's all I have to say for now. I hope it helped build on your mind.
Thanks for watching this channel, it's building on my mind. Check out my other videos, but first hit the bell and comment, like, subscribe. Please, it really helps with your